Hello and welcome, everybody. Another YouTube live show, and I'm getting started a little bit early because there is a lot to talk about tonight. A lot to talk about. There's been a bunch of reaction, a bunch of pushback and blowback, frankly, about the SEC and Big Ten's push to create 4 auto bids for each conference in 2026 and beyond in the playoff, including some incredible audio from Pat Forty that I'm going to play you. He of former Yahoo fame, now Sports Illustrated. But even with all of that, all the pushback, not only does the SEC and Big Ten, do they continue to push forward, they're even coming after the 2025 playoff, which for the uninitiated 2025 playoff, any changes require unanimous approval from all the conferences in Notre Dame, meaning that basically the SEC and Big Ten are SOL. They can't do anything really unless the Big Ten and ACC and everybody else decide to give in. But by God, they're going to try and push forward anyway. They're going to try and do it anyway to take the buys for next year. What they are upset about is the fact that you had Boise and Arizona State each picking up auto buys for winning the conference championship. They can't even stand to have one little thing that is a consequence of their own actions, by the way, be done for 2025 without trying to fight for it. And I have a lot of interesting thoughts and theories on what could be going on there, the reasoning behind trying to push for this. And is there an angle that the Big 12 can take and the ACC can take that actually might benefit them a little bit? Perhaps we can discuss that as well. Texas Tech, we already knew that they had Cody Campbell in tow, a billionaire booster, but he just became a multi-billionaire today. What that means for the future of Texas Tech and honestly, perhaps the future of just college athletics. Like, are we writing off anybody that's outside of the power vortex of the Big Ten and SEC too soon here in the future of college sports? I do want to explore that. Boy, this poor Matt Campbell in the NFL topic that I had yesterday, don't know if we're going to get to it because everything got pushed down again right before I started the show. That's happened 2 shows in a row now, directly before, and like the hour before I am going to kick things off, we get a big breaking news story. So anyway, thank you to everybody who's joining. I know it is a little bit early here, so I imagine this will be a later arriving crowd getting in tonight. And I know in some ways it's going to feel like a repeat of the show the other day, but man, I guess I didn't even put in the outline. We've got the ESPN piece of all of this, like ESPN trying to warn the SEC and Big Ten that what they are doing is foolish and not something that will be best for the long-term health and interest of the sport, which is crazy when ESPN is looking around and saying that. So anyway, a lot to get to there. I've got to pull up the Venmo responses as I realize that, because that is one way you can reach me. Obviously, fill up the live chat tonight. But if you want to be a part of the show and you are not in the chat, which you can fire up a super chat by clicking the $ below the chat box in order to do that. If you are here, if you want to guarantee that your question or comment makes it on the show, that is if you are in the YouTube chat. So if you want to chime in and make sure that your voice is heard, hop on over from Twitter to YouTube, because I know that we get a bunch of the audience live from Twitter. But you can also, if you're not able to watch live, contribute on Venmo, or if it's just more convenient, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo, and leave a question or comment there, and I will kick off the next show with it. So I had a couple of people weighing in here, like my guy Clint. I appreciate you, Clint. Thank you for your contribution. Clint says, missed the live show, but love the coverage. My question for you is, now that we are almost 2 years into the Big 12, what has been the biggest surprise you've had regarding the new schools, and what has been your biggest disappointment? Biggest surprise. Well, individually, it has been the season that BYU had last year. If we're going, well, I say that, I guess it was the season Arizona State had last year. Nothing has been more surprising than that. And looking at how Arizona State's trajectory has changed from everybody just being like, okay, cool, we'll see what you can do, come back to us in a couple of years, see if you've gotten to a bowl game, to all of a sudden not only coming within an eyelash of winning a playoff game against Texas and getting to the college football playoff semifinal, but young coach, like a coach who is younger than me. Kenny Dillingham is slightly younger than me. Okay. Much as I hate to admit that, but you've got the youngest coach out there who is an alum and now looks like a budding star. So Arizona State's entire position here looks like it's really changed, where they could be a longtime stalwart. They could be a longtime power here. But BYU turning the football ship around from what they were in year 1 to year 2 would probably be a close second in terms of the surprise there. Biggest disappointment. Well, I mean, it's hard, honestly, funny as we may have found it, it's hard to argue with what Utah football was this past year and where they have gone from coming in and people being like, all right, day one, they're the preseason favorite to win the league. We all hate this, but it looks like they're the best team in the league. They've got legendary coach, and they're going to be a great program. To, okay, what was that? More quarterback injuries, sub 500 season. You've got a head coach in waiting now because we don't know how much longer Kyle Whittingham's actually going to do this. So, like, what is happening with Utah football? You've just got Utah football in such flux that I feel like that to me is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum there, if you want to talk about a disappointment. So I think that's probably what I would tell you, Clint. I appreciate the question. It's a very good one, and I appreciate your support of the channel. Brian says, hi, John, let's make ESPN's fears true. This year, I created my own rankings of what my seeding would be. I refused to watch any game where two overseeded Notre Dame / Big Two teams played. Even the title game. We'll do this every year, Brian. Well, Brian, I admire your commitment, my friend. I admire your commitment to that. Obviously, as somebody who does content here surrounding college sports, I'm going to be watching all the games, but I would watch them anyway for now. It would challenge me a lot more if the SEC and Big Ten broke off and did their own thing. Then what would I do? And some of this is when we talk about, this being a threat long-term to the sport, if you continue to cut out large swaths of the country, the long-term threat, I think, erodes slowly. I don't think it's something that goes away with people as committed as you who will just immediately stop. I think it's like a slow burn on that. And that's why we say like long-term. Nobody wants to think long-term about anything right now, especially, administrators, athletic directors, presidents, and then of course the conference commissioners who may not be there in 10 years that would have to pay the bill, so to speak, for what is happening there. So that's my thought, Brian. That is my thought on that. But again, I respect it. I admire your conviction there. And, we'll see. Maybe if more schools like Texas Tech can pull in multi-billionaire donors and boosters, like there's a better chance of legitimately competing there, and it wouldn't have to be as big of an issue. So Brian had a second question here and a second contribution, which I appreciate. Brian said, hi, John, for the playoff negotiations, how about we divide and conquer? Agree to give the Big Ten 3 auto bids since they did so well, but insist on keeping the SEC at 2, just like the Big 12. If they refuse, then say we compromised and they can now go pound sand. Well, I mean, obviously that's not anything that they would ever agree to. So what you're doing there is just, preparing for what I guess some people would say is inevitable, but preparing for, hey, Big Ten and SEC are going to go. Like, if that's what you're going to come with to the negotiating table, they're going to laugh you off and presumably go do their own thing. I guess you'd be really calling their bluff there, saying like, are you guys actually going to do that? Is that what's actually going to occur here? I would be interested to see how serious the SEC and Big Ten actually would be if that's something that you did. I don't think they have the stomach for it right now. And I do feel like there's an element, especially after watching Arizona State do what they did to Texas last year and almost win the game. That's probably a part of why there's not as much appetite for it, right? That's probably a part of why nobody's ready to totally leave and give up yet. we'll see how this starts to go. A couple of years into the playoff, I don't know. Maybe that will change into the new playoff. Maybe that will change and people will start to get more disenchanted and more aggressive about whatever moves that they're going to be making. Doesn't seem to be there right now. Even for me, as much as I, hate the way the SEC and Big Ten have handled all this, I still sit there and I'm like, I feel like they being the Big 12, ACC, everybody else, just ride it out for now, see how it goes. See, depending on how the House settlement and all this new stuff, like we don't really know what this new landscape and era of college football and athletics is going to look like. Maybe you still have enough juice there, like what Arizona State did, and you can get over the hump and start making it a little bit more competitive and, just make it more exciting and different. Maybe that still does exist out there. So I'm willing to give it a shot. Knowing that, back of your mind, after that 6-year period with the playoff, you may well just be facing that anyway. So it could just be delaying the inevitable. But even if it is delaying the inevitable, to me, that's still worth it for right now. Reasonable minds can disagree on that. I'm completely open to that. Reasonable minds can absolutely disagree on that one. I understand how you would look at that and say, nope, just get it over with. Screw them. Let's go do our own thing right now. Appreciate you guys again. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to contribute that way. I have merch. Make sure you check it out in the link. It is in the description. The link in the description if you want some John Kurtz Show merch or you want some Open for Business merch, which, speaking of that, the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, you can also find the link to that in the description of the video. It's ofbnews.com, ofbnews.com. If you want to get signed up, but also link available there to click. Join 3,500 Big 12 fans who do subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Okay, so this was what Ross Dellenger, he wrote a story basically about what happened. The meetings are going on this week in New Orleans between SEC and Big 10 leadership. And he wrote a story about what happened. It was honestly, there was not as much in it as I thought, but the headline to come out of it here is what I'm going to read to you about, which is the top part, which is that the SEC and Big 10 are going to at least attempt to try and fight to get rid of the auto buys in the playoff next year. So this is what Ross Dellenger, which obviously that is, they have no real leverage here. Big 12 and ACC do not have to give in to that. And they're about to have to concede 4 automatic spots for everybody in the Big 10 and SEC in 26. So why would you do it? I'll have more on that in just a moment. I do think there could be a why, but Dellenger says inside a room on Wednesday, atop New Orleans and perhaps top college athletics, leaders of the SEC and Big 10 gather to explore some of the most significant issues. They emerged with few decisions made, except for one. This is the one decision they have made. They want to see a seeding change in the 2025 college football playoff, as I said. Have fun with that push. The 2 leagues will push playoff executives to alter the seeding of the upcoming postseason, aligning the seeds based directly on the selection committee's rankings. Such a move would eliminate the rule that grants first-round buys in the top 4 seeds to the 4 highest-ranked conference champions. They'll have a fight on their hands to make the change. And yes, I would imagine that they will, because again, what it does in practice is take away the bye from Boise, take away the bye from Arizona State. And it would have helped out a team like an Oregon, perhaps a bit this year. Actually, I guess I take that back. I'd have to go look at what the bracket is because Oregon still was the 1 seed. I digress. They'll have a fight on their hands to make that change. Any change to the 2025 playoff requires unanimity from the 10 FBS leagues and Notre Dame, as it is the last year of the original TV contract with ESPN. Why would the Big 12, ACC, and many of the Group of 5 commissioners, the main benefactors of the rule, vote for such a move? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. That's Ross Dellenger writing that. Some of them have hinted as much in comments to Yahoo Sports last month. Quote, I do not have the appetite to give up any financial reward that comes with a bye, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said, alluding to the $8 million reward earned by a team that automatically advances into the quarterfinals. So that's a nice callback there to something that Dellenger had before, Brett Yormark's quote, where he was like, why the hell would we just give away money? We're not in the business of doing that. And it's such a pertinent point here in the face of what the SEC and Big Ten are doing. They're already taking so much. It's such a money grab as well as a power grab, what they're doing in the playoff in 2026 and beyond. I think a lot of people get really focused on the power grab of it, and that's what publicly looks so bad. Like, why do you need to guarantee yourself spots? Just play it out and have the best teams go. Like, why do we need to be trying to rig it in your favor? And that's going to potentially make the games less meaningful, less teams actually being involved there, even though the playoff expands because it'll be condensed to conferences. Like, a lot of crappy things that go along with that. But the other part is the money. The SEC and Big Ten are going to be making over 3 times what they were from the playoff beforehand. So they're also just extending their financial gap over everybody else, which we'll see how much that can show up in NIL. I'm not really sure that it will be able to, but it can sure as hell show up in what you're able to pay a coach or a GM. You know, we saw Notre Dame trying to poach Texas Tech GM James Blanchard. Could be a lot more of that going on. So Brett Yormark, anyway, long story short, not in the business of just giving away $8 million at a time now when everybody really needs it. Dellenger mentions also that ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips referred to similar professional playoff formats that use an auto-buy structure. So he's like, look, what? It's not like this is some crazy structure. The NFL does it. Now, I don't think college football needs to be in the business of copying a lot of things that the NFL does, but this is one where you can at least say, hey, there's kind of a precedent set here. So, all right. Yeah, no way in hell that they should give in to this unless something is bartered with this. If there is some kind of concession you can get. More on that in just a moment. Also, it's just one of those where you just have to be like, man, the ball's on you guys to do this. After what you're already doing, what we know is now coming through the reporting, what we know is coming for 2026 and beyond, and you've gone through an entire week of that getting blasted again because that leaked last year that was a desire of the SEC and Big Ten to get 4 auto bids apiece. It got crushed. They kind of tucked their tail and ran and hid, waited a while, hoped that subsided, came back, and now they're going to do it again. And once it hit the public, they got clobbered again. I'm about to play you some of the reaction to that later on here in the show tonight. And yet they still said, despite all that, we're going to even come for 2025 when we don't have the actual leverage or power to do this. So a part of me is just like, how dare you? You know, I mean, Mindy Kaling from The Office, like, first of all, how dare you? It's something that's wildly unpopular. Like, nobody wants this. Andy Staples from On3, he did an unscientific straw poll, basically, just a Twitter poll. And 81% of the audience said they don't want it. Like, they do not want this version of the playoff. They would prefer either what was already had or just go into hey, no auto bids, rank them, throw them in there. Even Pat Forty, Stuart Mandel, lots of national guys who have been more in the corner. Like, we hated Stuart Mandel during the July 2021 era with what he was writing about the Big 12, stepping on the smaller brands. He was like, look, what are you guys doing? Like, this is going to be bad, all these moves that you're making. And yet they're still rolling forward with all of this. I do think there's not a very good chance that this happens. And a part of that can be even traced back to comments that Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner, made on the Paul Feinbaum show last week when he said he does think it's a long shot to happen. So even he basically admitted to Feinbaum, like, yeah, there's not a whole lot we can do. And Feinbaum has been one of the people that has pushed for this the most, like, that most wants to see a change for 2025 because, how dare anybody give Arizona State a bye when they should have beaten Texas anyway. And speaking of that happened in this current format. It's not like that created some crazy awful scenario that gave us 2 drastically non-competitive games. I mean, Penn State Boise was pretty competitive, and then Arizona State should have beaten Texas. It was one play and or one bad call away. So I don't know, man. I don't know. There's also the fact that conference realignment is the reason that this is all messed up and weird. because the idea behind this whole structure initially was, hey, we'll have the equal-ish conferences. Everybody gets a say. Nobody's ahead of somebody else. Well, we got this lopsided power structure because the SEC pulled Texas and Oklahoma away and started this wave of conference realignment. So just take your medicine, man. Like for a year, I guess it would be 2 last year and this year with the playoff. Just take your medicine. You're going to get everything you want next year. You wrote into the next contract that you guys are the czars and everybody else has to bow down to you and you get the ultimate decision-making power. For 1 year, please just accept the consequences of your own actions and possibly take it in the shorts a little bit. We'll see if you even really would be, but possibly for just 1 year. You know, I mean, down in the South, right? I thought in the South we're really big on, you know, nothing's handed to you. Hard work, deal with the consequences of your actions, be a man. Doesn't really seem like that with the way that the SEC is acting about all of this. Just wanting things handed to them just cause. Does not really seem to fit the cultural vibe there with what's going on in the SEC. Now, the one thing I would throw out here to finish my thought on what could the Big 12 possibly get out of this or the ACC possibly get out of this? Like, is there any room to negotiate? I don't. The problem is I don't know like what exactly you would get out of this because the chip that you have is a change that would last for 1 year. So if you're trying to make that turn into some sort of tangible change for the 6-year playoff contract that's going to start in 26, I don't know what the SEC and Big Ten would actually be willing to give up. I can't imagine that it would be much. So I understand the idea that people would have of like, well, you know, I guess you can come to the table and be like, all right, yeah, fine. You want to bully your way into that? We'll give you that, but you better give us X because it sure as hell is not going to be, you know, you guys only take 3 auto bids. I mean, that's a 6-year thing. So much more, it's so much more of a long-term effect than it is just the 1 year. So I don't know what you do. I guess I saw somebody saying, I see on Twitter right before I popped on here, like, could you negotiate like, hey, you know, our conference champ, we get 2 auto bid spots and our conference champ gets a bye or something, like something format related. Maybe I have my doubts though. But possibly maybe there's something there. I don't know. Brett Yormark seems to be a pretty good negotiator. Maybe he can figure something out. We shall see. But they just keep pushing, man. They just keep pushing. And rolling right into the next topic here, even ESPN thinks the SEC and Big Ten are going too far right now, which is crazy. I mean, think about that. That is crazy. Like ESPN has long been at the center of the biggest problems facing the sport and like why we're in this mess. Like they have been the center of it, the center of the issues. For them to turn around and be like, hey, SEC Big Ten, this might be a little much, man. Like, hey, we were really cool with this. We were the ringleaders earlier. You guys were following us. This is good, but we're a little scared now. Like this is getting, you know, we're just trying to have some fun. This turned a little dark and dangerous. That should scare everybody about the current state of college sports, that what the Big Ten and SEC are doing here is something that gives ESPN fear and trepidation. That should give you fear about where this all could go long term. So here's the ESPN quote from Ross Dellenger's article that came out on Sunday. Dellenger says, though they have not publicly commented, ESPN executives have expressed to at least some college leaders apprehension about a format that provides such lopsided automatic access. Quote, you are going to alienate a part of the country, as one power broker put it. You are going to alienate part of the country. It's pretty easy to see why there would be concern there. You've got a ton of brands in the Big Ten and SEC, but it accounts for about 25% of the actual country. And college football has been a national/regional sport, like regional sport across the country. And you've already cut out an entire league in the Pac-12. There have only been 2 teams that like truly died a death with that, but that will have harm. That, you know, that will kill over time, you'll see a delayed effect, but that will kill a decent amount of interest on the West Coast in the sport. You've already done that. If you start making this too lopsided toward yourselves here, you're just going to get more people slowly falling off. Like earlier, I got the Venmo super chat of a fan who said he had already done that, like stopped watching those games because he was just too disenchanted with it. Like, you will get more and more of that if you continue to go down this path. And so that's what ESPN is saying. Like, hey, we're trying to protect our long-term investment here. Like, yes, we've been in the business of some short-term cash grabs. And yes, Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC was good business for us, because instead of 50% of that TV deal, we had 100% already, and then it juices it up, makes it even better for us. Yeah, that was good business. But we're in the business of operating with good business for us. And for us, we need the entire sport to be viable, to have enough interest nationwide. It cannot just be these big brands. Like, even after a while, even just big brand against big brand games, they'll lose some appeal. It will become less unique as it happens over time. And so you could see this slow erosion if you're losing a large swath of the country at the same time. And remember, if we need a refresher on like ESPN, who ESPN is and who it is that is saying this and realizing this, it's the same ESPN that led the charge to bring Oklahoma and Texas into the Big 12, as I said, which kicked off this whole wave of realignment and where we got to. It's the same ESPN that gave Texas the Longhorn Network, which was a huge point of contention in the Big 12 and helped lead to the point where there was discontentment, right? It's the same ESPN whose former president, John Skipper, had this exchange with Dan Le Batard right after Oklahoma and Texas went to the SEC. So Le Batard asks, is this all the instigation of ESPN? Is this all your fault? And Skipper said, I'd like to take the fifth. Do I have rights? Now, I guess you could take that as, hey, it's just a joke, but I don't know. And pretty open the rest of the interview. Sure seemed like a guy who didn't really want to go down that road. Skipper also said, I doubt all of that is unrelated. I would not assume that this is just happening, that one day Texas and Oklahoma woke up. I would guess that it's a logical sequence of events that ESPN now has all of the SEC. Now they bring Texas and Oklahoma again in. Think of all the good games you get. So he's basically laying it out there. Like, yeah, this seems like too much of a coincidence to just be a coincidence. That's ESPN. Like, that's the role that they've played in this, which has hurt the sport objectively. And now they're saying, hey, yeah, we're cool with hurting the sport, but like not that much, because that's too far. That's a bridge too far. This will be too bad for the sport. It's a big deal to me, man. That one line in Dellenger's story that got buried into that, just feel like that should be striking more fear in the hearts of people. But the problem is, like, some of the national guys, many of them have recognized it. And I'm going to read you some of that before the show is done and play you some of that. But a lot of the, your Big Ten and SEC, like Baghdad Bobs, I mean, they're just cheering this on. Like, hey, it's all great. We've got all the power, all the money, bring us more. We're getting fat and happy. But it is short-sighted. I don't care how good you think it is in the short term. It is short-sighted. And like, when is enough enough? You've already got all the advantages. It's tilted way in your favor. When is enough to just let it be and preserve what we can of the sport and keep it as interesting to everybody across the country as we possibly can? We've already shredded so much of the fabric of like what makes this sport great. Like, why do we need to do more? You've already got the way that the revenue distribution is going to go with the new playoff. I mean, you're already getting over 40% of it for two leagues. Like, it's crazy. It's a crazy amount that is going to those two leagues. Why do you need more? Or excuse me, I believe it's like 42% that the rest of the leagues outside of the Big Ten and SEC have to split for the college football playoff revenue in the new playoff. So you got to listen to the messenger and follow the money, because as much as this is a lot of short-term money and power going to Big Ten, SEC, ESPN, Fox, whatever, ESPN's also really concerned about their bottom line. They're pretty shrewd business-wise. Like, they're not about to get into bad business deals. They know that when they see it, and they're already being like, yo, guys, maybe chill a little bit on this. We got to chill. So that raised some alarm bells for me. I would certainly imagine that it's raising some alarm bells. Most of you watching this channel probably already have the alarm bells there, but we do get some viewership of people who will disagree. What did I have somebody say the other day, saying in the comments, like, this is the most biased show that's out there, something like that. And I will make no bones about the fact that I certainly come at this from a pro non-power 2 perspective. Okay. But this is ESPN. ESPN is not me. They do not have the same motivations that I do here to try and root for the non-power 2 leagues to really stay together. But ESPN, I guess, does realize that they have some level of motivation in that long term. All right. Click the $ below the chat box to leave a super chat. Much appreciate everybody who does that. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to leave a question or comment there as well, if it's more convenient, or particularly that is there for those of you that cannot watch the show live and you still want to be a part of the conversation, because I will kick off the next show with your question or comment if you do that. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, which you can find the link in the description, or go to ofbnews.com. And I've got merch. Click the merch link in the description of the video if you want a little bit of show merch. Okay, now we get into some of the fun stuff. I have already outlined to you why I can recognize why the Big Ten and SEC wanting to procure 4 auto bids for the college football playoff in 2026 and beyond is not a good thing. I've shown you that ESPN realizes that that is not a good thing, and that's why they have tried to slow that progress down. So there's, 2 for 2, but predictably it took a beating in the national media cycle again as well. So let's go ahead and make it 3 for 3 here. 3 for 3 on getting beaten around by everybody, because national media, including a former adversary of this channel and Big 12 fans, one key former adversary has weighed in with some pretty good words that I'm going to read to you in a moment. But first, I've got to get to this audio. And if you follow me on Twitter, it's at JL Kurtz in order to do so. You saw this or heard this, I guess is the more appropriate way to put it. You heard this earlier this week, but I like to listen to the College Football Inquirer podcast with Dan Wetzel, Ross Dellenger, and Pat Forty. And when they were talking about all this, the fact that the SEC and Big Ten are trying to take these 4 automatic bids and make that a thing, Pat Forty went off. And as the kids would say, man, you got to let him cook. Let Pat Forty cook here. So I'm gonna play this for you.
I did it last year.
There we go.
You want to know how I feel about this? I think I said it last year. If anything, I'm only more entrenched that this is terrible. This is further greed. This is unchecked power mongering. There's no leadership. There's no leaders. We don't have any leaders. We have strongmen and grifters. That's all we got. We have strongmen and grifters who are running college athletics. They don't give a damn about the whole. They don't give a damn about any other sports. All they want is more money and more control for the things for the top people. That's what the SEC and the Big Ten want most of all. And the ACC and the Big 12 are willing to go along with it because they're going to get 2 bids out of this. And everybody's scared to death that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to go off and do their own thing, to which, again, I say, dare them. Dare them to do it, because if they really want to go down as the worst people in the history of college sports, that's where they're headed. This is far enough. This is far enough that you are shoving stuff so far down people's throats that nobody is sitting there clamoring to say, God, the playoff was no good. We need more teams and we need more automatic bids for the people that already have all the advantages. Is anybody out there saying that? Then maybe it's the same people that want a 76-team basketball tournament. Where are they? We're going to end up with that. They're going to shove that down our throat too. That's coming. It's great. College athletics is run by wonderful people.
Excellent. Excellent. Well done, Pat Forty. Now, as you'll notice, I mean, the Big 10 or the Big 12 rather, and ACC are not totally abstained from the scorn of Pat 40 there, as he says, like, look, they're just going to go with it because they want the 2 auto bids, which I've said to you, like, as much as all this sucks, it could be worse. It could be worse than that. So, like, yeah, you're going to go along with it, but it's only because of the position that you've been put in. Like, what other choice do you really have? I guess 40 says the choice is call their bluff, go do your own thing, but then you're expediting a jump to losing a lot of your best players. I mean, if you're ready for everybody to hit the portal in the spring to jump to Big 10 and SEC schools, do that, jump and not be competing in the same postseason as them like that, you know. So I don't know that there's much of a choice. They've been pinned into this position by the leadership. And the other thing, you know, I love Josh Pate. I think he does an excellent job. I've told you guys that many times. But I did hear him say the other day, you know, if you think it's all like, you know, Sankey and Petiti and these guys, remember that they work for the presidents and athletic directors in their leagues. And so they're just carrying out the wishes of those guys. Like, okay, fine. They're clearly still a major part of the problem, even if they're just carrying out the will of whatever those guys want, who they technically work for. You're all a big part of the problem. If Sankey were a real true leader here, he could say, hey guys, maybe this is one, you know, you could try and curry favor and like, maybe we back off of this and listen to ESPN and try and preserve the long-term investment here and think about, you know, 2 or 3 TV contracts from now. And will we still be making as much money, because will there still be as much national interest in the sport? So either way, you know, you're not taking a stand to try and make the right decision for everybody involved, or just the right decision for the sport, not ruining the sport. You're complicit one way or the other. You're either not trying to do that when deep down you know that's the right thing, or you're just as big a part of the problem as everybody else there in looking at this in such a short-sighted manner. So does not matter to me. Either way you slice it, it's not great. Now, let's turn to Stuart Mandel, right? A lot of people around here have not been big fans of Stuart Mandel. I certainly have had times where I've had my issues, and obviously the Pac-12, Big 12 saga there for a while was definitely very testy. 2021 was probably the worst time for that, when he wrote that article, the infamous article about the Hateful Eight's potential TV value, which he was comparing to the AAC at that point in time. But got to give it to Stuart Mandel. I say all that to say he's been a guy that has gravitated more toward like the big brand stuff in the past, but this is what he said about the SEC and Big Ten doing this. Quote, well, the 4-bid idea was first discussed a year ago. Behold the arrogance if the SEC pushes it through immediately after landing just 3 bids last season. That is funny. That is funny. Now they will say, well, look, this will be an expanded 14 or 16. We would have gotten Bama or, you know, whoever, insert Bama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina in. We would have gotten them in last year if this were expanded. Okay, whatever. The point is, you guys were not a shoe-in to just get all these teams in there and that, you know, it'd be a 5 or 6 bid league. No, it was the worst SEC league that we've seen in like 20 years. So yeah, the timing on that is pretty funny. And I can appreciate that Mandel points that out. He also would go on to say, none of this means college football is indestructible. The single biggest threat to its popularity is the most recent cycle of realignment gone wild, which cost 12 West Coast schools, their natural rivals, exiled 2 to Siberia, and has effectively told every fan base outside the Big Ten and SEC that their school is unimportant. Yeah. Then he says legislating that distinction into the playoff will alienate large swaths of the country. There is an element of that. That's actually a really interesting point from him. Like, we all basically know how the SEC and Big Ten feel about it and how they've treated everybody, but it hasn't been explicitly like written out like this into something that's very consequential. And they've monetized it now, right? They have further monetized it by adding these extra bids. They have further monetized it. There's more finality to it when they do it like this. And he says it's all for something that is completely unnecessary. Also true. It's just for greed. It's for greed. That's it. Yes, you're freaking out because revenue sharing. It's greed, man. You already have so many more advantages over everybody else. It is greed. We've got the Big Ten. You know, one of the stories I didn't talk about a ton on the channel that came out within the last couple of weeks is that Tony Petitti and the Big Ten, they're exploring private equity. Like, okay, you guys need private equity with all the advantages that you already have there. You're going to take the private equity idea from the Big 12 who was doing it because the Big 12 would reasonably need it to stay close to you guys in money. Mandel closed by saying it's not generally a winning formula to alienate 75% of your customers, but the two ruling parties are governing for themselves. Yeah. The SEC and Big Ten, he pointed out, only comprise 25% of all FBS schools. So that's where he gets the 75%. Literally 75% of the other schools are who you would be alienating here. And then we got this from Dennis Dodd, too. So Dennis Dodd from CBS jumped in and did a whole piece about how the risk for college football right now is that it turns too much into pro wrestling, where it feels like there are just predetermined outcomes here. He said a college football playoff with auto qualifiers becomes a little less unscripted and a little less credible. Perhaps even the SEC and Big Ten athletic directors who gathered this week to discuss the playoff are unaware of that basic truth. They have been warned of the risk, maybe not directly, but any conference worth its media rights consultant knows the pitfalls. So he's saying anybody that's got media consultants surely has been warned of the long-term risks of this. Again, if ESPN is going to see it and complain about it, yeah, you would certainly think so. Dodd says, I'm not suggesting the outcome of individual games would be known. I'm suggesting that a portion of the field could be known in advance with the AQs. With 4 Big Ten spots locked in, the likes of Iowa could be guaranteed a spot as early as November 1st, a month before the season ends. Nothing against Iowa, but that stinks. More than that, it reeks of pro wrestling. Dodd brings up something here that I'd kind of forgotten about. The SEC and Big Ten last year actually floated the idea of their two champions being seeded number 1 and number 2 in the playoff. Those 2 spots would have been assured before the season started. At that point, why even play the season? Yeah, now that is one of the areas where they got enough pushback where they did kind of back down. And you can understand why. Like, okay, we do not need to have you automatically. Just go earn it. For God's sake, go earn it. Please, earn something. People from pull yourself up by your bootstraps land. Earn something. Dodd says, well, there's no evidence such an outlandish demand will emerge this week. There's still a possibility the big dogs could screw this up. The warning signs continue to flash red. The latest championship game featured 2 blue bloods, Notre Dame and Ohio State. It was the 5th least watched championship game since the BCS started in 1998. So bottom 5 rating in the last almost 30 years. Bottom 5 rating. And yet it was 2 blue bloods, like the type of game that you're hoping to get more and more of with what it is that you're doing. Dodd says, does the annual possibility of 3 Michigan versus Ohio State games improve the ratings? Too much of a good thing is overkill. You know, even that was driving Josh Pate nuts when he was talking about that this year. SEC-based guy, national guy. So look, if you're going to get Ohio State and Michigan playing multiple times per year, that's going to erode at how big the rating is, how much we care about when it does actually happen. And that's another one of those long-term things. If you're going to do a Super League with just Big Ten and SEC, those games will get old hat. You know, if that's what's happening year in, year out all the time, people will get a little bit tired of seeing those games. It will become more ho-hum mundane. Whereas right now seems more exciting. You got to think about the long-term stuff, man. Remember fruit stripe gum? Maybe I'm just a child of the 90s. Fruit stripe gum. It was awesome. You'd get it and pop it in, and it was like the greatest tasting thing ever for about 90 seconds. And then it lost all its flavor, and it was like, oh, okay. There's some of that at play here if you're going to do Ohio State, Michigan multiple times. Just to drive the wrestling point home here. For now, the SEC and Big Ten have become quite the tag team. Let's hope all of it doesn't develop into WrestleMania. Okay, I've got some super chats to get to. I'm going to get to those in just a moment. But I do want to make this point. And Ron, I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Ron. Ron is a Georgia fan, and Ron says Georgia's 53-5 the last 4 years, best in college football. They've earned it. Well, I think what a large part of what I am saying here is that for Georgia, Okay, you can feel like they've earned it now, but it will be a bad business decision for Georgia long term if you push too far right now and you alienate enough of the country. It may be good for 5 years, it may be good for 10 years, but then after that, if it becomes so niche that it's only the fan bases of 25 schools, and sure, some national appeal as well, but you've lost 75% of your audience there because they're just disenchanted by this, and you're cutting them out of too much, well, then those TV contracts for Georgia are going to become less valuable. It will not be as valuable of an entity, and it will, one, become therefore like kind of less exciting for you, but also financially just less viable. And so like that's the problem here and why a lot of this feels very short-sighted. And that's what ESPN and, well, I don't know about Fox, at least ESPN has been reported because Dodd reported it too in his story. ESPN is saying like, guys, chill a little bit here. Chill. I like Tim. I'm an Ohio State fan and I do not like how this is going. I appreciate that a lot, Tim. I appreciate somebody who's a fan of a big brand that's like, because if you are Ohio State, I can imagine if I were an Ohio State fan right now, and Starter 179, and Eddie, I'm getting to you in just a moment. If I were an Ohio State fan right now, I'd be like, guys, like we just won the national title. We can go buy a roster. We're fine. Our conference is getting so much more money. We're going to be at the top of the sport. We're still a great brand. Like what we don't need this. This is excess. This is too much greed. Like I've got the mansion. I don't need an extra room full of cash to swim around in like Scrooge McDuck. I can survive just with the mansion and having an open 7th bedroom. Like that's okay. I don't need it to be filled with cash so that I can go take a gratuitous swim in the cash every day. That may not be the best play here. So that's kind of the point. Starter 179, thank you for being here. Appreciate you, my friend. Starter 179 says, I can't see a scenario the Big Ten and SEC don't get sued for anti-competitive practices. Their scheduling agreement is easy to prove as antitrust. I mean, I tell you what, I'm glad you bring it up. I love talking about it. I hate that scheduling agreement so much. That to me is one of the most BS things of this whole deal. And what's interesting was I forgot about it. I didn't even have time to get to it. Heather Dinich had a story from ESPN where it specifically mentioned that there would be attorneys present through this whole process of the playoff changes because they're worried about exactly that. They're worried about that. So there is at least even a worry from SEC and Big Ten folks of like trying not to push so far as to get hit with some of that. So they are aware of that. And I think that lends obviously credibility to what it is that you're saying, Starter 179. And I'm dead set with you. That scheduling agreement is such, I don't want to get demonetized here, YouTube. It's such BS, man. That's such BS. Okay, we'll go to 9 conference games and then we'll do a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten so we can just lock you all out of ever being able to play us. And we'll say your strength of schedule is not good enough to get any of the precious few at-large spots. And so we'll just totally lock you out. And then even if, not that people really feel like bowl games have that much of an effect either, but they're talking about a postseason scheduling agreement too. So we won't even let you play us in what we deem to be somewhat meaningless postseason games. So good luck ever getting your crack at us outside of like your 2 chances in the playoff every year. Have fun. Yeah, that sucks. That really sucks. And that's again, not good for the sport. I digress. Whatever. Eddie, thank you, Eddie. Appreciate you being here, Eddie. If you need a real estate agent in San Antonio, you guys know who to call. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. Eddie says, remember I said let them go, but have them take their baseball, track, basketball, then sue them for antitrust for trying to kill off all the competition. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I guess that is a part of it too. You know, if you're going to call their bluff on 2026 and beyond and they decide to go, then you try and hit them with the antitrust suit, whatever. And you're also saying like, you know, take your basketball away if you can. The NCAA tournament, I don't know like how the legalities of all that break down. Like, can you just say like, we're not going to show up and play? That's such a big moneymaker for the conferences too. So you're really hurting yourself financially if you don't do that. There are a million tentacles to that. But yes, I do remember, Eddie, you saying basically like, all right, fine. Like you guys go do your football thing. We're not going to play you in basketball. You know, one issue there is that the SEC and Big Ten, if you're looking at Ken Palm this year, are technically ranked above the Big 12. Obviously, the SEC is just a behemoth this year in basketball, but even the Big Ten has been ranked slightly ahead of the Big 12, according to the analytics this year. Has not been the best year for the conference in hoops. So timing may not be perfect on all of that. But yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from on that. And I understand if you have that attitude. I am still more in the ride this out while you can. There are so many uncertainties with how this new era is going to unfold. I would like to see how this plays out, especially when I'm about to read you the next story that I am about Texas Tech having now a multi-billionaire booster. Let's see how it all plays out. I'll take my chances and see how it all plays out as opposed to just punting on it now. But I understand not wanting to put up with their BS anymore and just say, to hell with it, let's go. I get it. I appreciate you, Eddie. Thank you for being here as always, man. Really, really do appreciate that. All right, look, I mentioned this about Texas Tech. Oh, by the way, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. Link in the description as well. You can check out merch, link in the description as well if you want some merch for the show. But Texas Tech, we talked about recently how the Red Raiders have a billionaire booster who has fueled this incredible portal class, $10 million portal class, 17 kids, ranked either number 1 or number 3 in the country, depending on if you're looking at On3 or 24/7. That's gotten a little bit better. That situation has gotten even better now for Tech. And if you're looking for reasons to not count out the Big 12 or ACC, like basically anybody outside of the Big 10 or SEC in this new era of college athletics, look no further than Texas Tech. Look no further than Texas Tech. Cody Campbell is the guy, right? He was quoted in that big Max Olson story in ESPN about how exactly Tech did this. He is an oil, natural gas guy. Tech fans have been saying billionaire. I assume before this, he still was a billionaire before actually even selling his company, which is the big news now that people are talking about. Clearly had the money to back all of this and did it. So Cody Campbell, major Texas Tech booster, sold his oil and natural gas company Double Eagle to Diamondback Energy on Tuesday for approximately $4.08 billion. You got to say that with what is the name, like Dr. Evil? $4.08 billion in cash and stock. The founder of Texas Tech's NIL collective, the Matador Club, Campbell was the main financial source for the Red Raiders' top-ranked portal class this winter. Working with Tech head coach Joey McGuire and GM James Blanchard, Campbell helped piece together the number 1 portal class according to On3, which the price tag is $10 million. Okay, so for Tech, this is going to be good no matter what. And it could go a number of ways. I mean, obviously, genius take, John. You've got someone who just made $4 billion as a donor to your school, is highly motivated and loves the programs. Genius take by me. Yes, but my point here is we don't know exactly how good it can be. Because if we knew, for instance, that college athletics was going to stay the way that it is right now, which is wild, wild west, no revenue sharing cap, go spend as much money as you possibly can, pay for play, in essence legal, even if maybe technically in some NCAA bylaw right now it doesn't say that. It is. They've got no power to come down on you. Pay for play is legal. That would be, this would be a massive advantage for Texas Tech. So I think a lot of Big 12 fans would be sitting around looking at this like, man, I really hope they actually do have some control with this Deloitte clearinghouse that is supposed to make sure anything above the revenue sharing cap is going to be fair market value NIL deals, because that will help us stay pretty competitive with SEC and Big 10 schools in terms of what we can pay kids. If it really, the rest will have to be fair market value. It can't just be a total free for all. If you're Tech, who cares, man? We can do the total free for all thing as well as anybody. We've got a highly motivated multi-billionaire donor now. We'll be all right, dude. If it is, though, going to be fair market value, then it gets a little trickier. How much can he help in situations like that? If it's about getting somebody a fair market value deal, how much can it be, I guess, just contributing directly to the athletic department to therefore give them some extra money to help them fuel the revenue sharing number versus, pumping money into facilities, which the article did make it a point to insinuate that the facilities still did help. And if we go back to a world where money is going to be relatively even because of the cap, then things like facilities and great recruiting, just personalities, great recruiters, that will start to matter more than it does now, where people feel like the money has become the biggest deal and the biggest part of it. So anyway, that's just something to think about, like how much mileage can Texas Tech get out of this? It's going to be great for them, but it could be really, really great depending on how all this gets legislated moving forward. And that's why, I saw my guy Greg Flugar really making this point on Twitter over the last couple of days. But it's sort of silly to just write any conference or any school totally off right now when we don't know how everything's going to go down with the House settlement and enforcement of NIL. And there are a ton of variables, tons of variables as to how all this will work. So just wait and let it all play out, because there are schools like a Texas Tech, they're going to be able to have as much money as basically anybody. And now they have the momentum and credibility of, hey, we just threw together a number one portal class. And that's, what do we hear from SEC country about why, despite whatever happened on the field this year, where they only get 3 teams in, and it clearly was a down year for the conference, and they were just an ordinary conference, not above everybody else. We hear, well, yeah, but NFL talent. Go look at the NFL talent and how much more is there, and recruiting rankings, and we're just pulling in, we being the SEC and Big Ten, so much more talent that, okay, well, look at what Texas Tech just did. They have the money to go get the number one portal class in the country. They're butting heads with Oregon, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, everybody like that, and they're pulling together the best class out there. That's talent. That's not, hey, look at this scrappy team with Cam Scattaboo and, a second or third tier high school quarterback and Sam Levitt transferring from Michigan State, this kind of scrappy underdog bunch with a fun, energetic coach. No, that's Texas Tech went and took the dudes from you. They got resourced up enough to take the dudes from you. So if that translates into actual winning, and if this is an era where they could do that every year freely because they've got this guy with the money, and if I had $4 billion, you can bet your what that I would be buying players for K-State left and right. Like that would become my hobby. How much money you need, Coach Tang? How much money you need, Chris Kleiman? I don't care. I'll give you $20 million a year. It doesn't matter. Worth it. Well worth it to me. Right? So yeah, let's see how this goes. And for the rest of the Big 12, that can be a scary thing. If you're a fan of another Big 12 school, like, all right, what could happen here? Because here's for example, like this is the kind of, Cody Campbell's a motivated guy, right? I forgot to mention this a second ago. After the Colorado loss for Texas Tech in November, somebody replied to a tweet of Cody Campbell's and said, buy us an O-line. And he said, I will. And then he got them the number one portal class in the country. Literally did it, followed through. That's what fan dreams are made of, is having somebody like somebody like that in place with the money to go do it, who has that kind of love for the school and that kind of motivation to make it happen. Dream come true situation for Texas Tech and Texas Tech fans, and not everybody has quite this. Do they have enough at places in the SEC? I would imagine a lot of them probably so, but this at least shows that Tech can be really competitive. Free-for-all environment right now. It's not like Ole Miss, LSU, Alabama didn't want players this offseason. Can assure you they did, and Texas Tech still came through and got the number one class. So, here we go. Well, thank you for this, Starter 179. Technically, second company that Cody Campbell sold. The first was for $6 billion. All right, so it's like a 10 billionaire. Well, how many digits are we up to at that point? Is that like are we up to like 10-digit guy with 10 plus billion? Anyway, he's got a lot of money, folks. I don't think he's going to be hurting. So yeah, hey, congrats Texas Tech, and perhaps, congrats to the Big 12 there, if that can be something that helps the Big 12 really compete nationally. And hell, a lot's been made of K-State's basketball season right now, not trending toward making the NCAA tournament, but they did outspend almost everybody out there, and that's little old K-State. one of the smallest endowments in the conference. Teams can get motivated and find ways, even in this free-for-all environment we're in right now. Alan, what's up, Alan? We'll close with you. I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Alan says, John, sorry to miss your last few shows. I've been holed up in a bomb shelter for Jayhawk basketball fans. Hope Bill Self can resurrect the remainder of the season. Go Big 12, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Alan. Boy, Alan, yeah, it's getting ugly. Now, I can't talk. K-State also just had a wretched road trip to the state of Utah. But, man, yeah, BYU beating Kansas by 34 it was, right? 34. Crazy times that we're living in right now where Kansas could be like, I don't know what, like a 7 seed in the tournament. That's nuts. Now, it's also nuts that creates us all to be like, man, this is insane. Kansas is going to be a 7 seed. That speaks to the job that Bill Self has done. So I'm still not totally writing the guy off. Like maybe a good chunk of the fan base is right now because they're just not used to seeing this. But it is crazy. I mean, that the Kansas mystique is just not there at all with this team. And now, the rest of the year, yeah, I guess you could say, the mystique used to be a bad thing for Kansas and that it meant you were getting everybody's best shot. I don't know. Now you're going to get everybody's best shot and there's not going to be the mystique that makes them be like, oh, I don't know. Can we actually do this? Oh no. Everybody in the league realizes they definitely can right now. The way Kansas is playing. So, we'll see. Alan, Bill Self's great, man. Hall of Famer. I wouldn't put it past him to figure something out and get this team to make a decent run in the tournament, but running out of time for sure. Running out of time. Anyway, I appreciate your support as always, Alan. Thank you for being here, my friend. Thank you. Okay. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. Link in the description. As is a link in the description to my merch site if you want to pick up some merch. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you weren't here live and you want to submit a question or comment that way or just support the channel, that is very much welcome as well. Thank you to everybody who does that. I very, very much appreciate you all. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. Have a terrific rest of your week, and I will talk to you very soon.